A major goal in oil refining is to optimize the mix of petroleum products output from a refinery so that profit is maximized. For example, in the U.S., gasoline is in greater demand and thus is more valuable as a transportation fuel than diesel. But in Europe, diesel is the more valuable transportation fuel. Hence, refinery output targeted for the U.S. will attempt to maximize the amount of gasoline that can be produced from a barrel of oil, such as shown on the left, while output targeted for the European Union will seek to maximize diesel production from the same barrel, such as shown on the right. These fractional variations in production can be achieved in part by using different types of crude oil in the refining process. Crude oils from different regions of the world have different viscosities, and the lower the viscosity of a crude oil, the more light hydrocarbons it contains, and thus the greater the fraction of gasoline that can be refined from it. The drawback with relying solely on the type of crude oil in refining, however, is that low viscosity crude tends to cost more than high viscosity crude, and higher input costs cut into refinery profits. Consequently, an additional approach to optimizing the mix of petroleum products in refining is to convert lower value products into higher value products. This is done through additional refining processes beyond just fractional distillation. Such increased refining flexibility is primarily achieved by adding 3 to 4 types of units to the crude distillation unit schematicized here. Note that in this schematic, diesel fuel falls under distillate, and bitumen or asphalt has been broken out from the other residual hydrocarbons that emerge from the base of the distillation unit. The reason for the latter will become clear momentarily. In order to refine high viscosity crude oils, the most important addition to the distillation units is one or more cracking units. These cracking units break apart or crack relatively long chains of hydrocarbons in the fuel oil range into shorter chains of hydrocarbons that fall into the gasoline and diesel ranges. This cracking can be accomplished by different means, giving rise to different types of cracking units. For example, cracking using very high temperatures and pressures is achieved in a visbreaker. What you see here is a fluid catalytic cracker, which fluidizes a solid catalyst that in turn facilitates hydrocarbon cracking under lower temperatures and pressures. There are also cracking units that use gas-based catalysts. Among other hydrocarbons, the cracking process produces naphthas. These can be upgraded into gasoline feedstock with the addition of an alkylation unit. The output of the alkylation unit increases the octane of the gasoline. In other words, it increases the compression the gasoline can undergo in the pistons of an internal combustion engine before the gasoline is detonated or combusted. Thus, high-octane gas increases overall engine performance by reducing engine misfires and raising the likelihood of complete combustion of the gasoline. Another important enhancement to a refinery is a reformer. The reformer unit carries out the opposite task of a cracking unit. It unifies or reforms short, low-octane naphtha hydrocarbon molecules into longer-chain, high-octane gasoline molecules. This is an example of a reforming unit. Finally, refinement of very high viscosity crudes requires a coking unit. With the exception of asphalt or bitumen, this unit cracks the longest hydrocarbon chain molecules, upgrading them into fuel oils that can then be upgraded even further in the cracking units. An important product of the coker is petroleum coke. This is an essentially pure carbon fuel used in high-temperature processes such as steelmaking. The petroleum coke is a solid residue that gets left behind in the coking unit, an example of which is shown here. The coke is literally drilled out of the cylinders visible in the lower half of the unit by the derricks that you see sitting above the cylinders. In addition to the distillation, cracking, alkylation, reformer, and coker units, an advanced refinery will have a gas processing unit which cleans the liquid gases and recovers refinery fuel that is burned to help run the refinery. An advanced refinery will also have units for removing contaminants from the various hydrocarbon streams, the most abundant contaminant being sulfur. When you add the on-site tanks for storing crude oil and refined petroleum products, as well as all the pipes for moving the liquids and gases around the refinery, you end up with a massive, sprawling facility that's the size of a small industrial town.